homeschool friends. Today I'm going to take a deep dive into Latin from your guide and what this really looks like in my Challenge B and Challenge A lesson plans. I had someone ask if I could explain the Latin process a little bit more, so that's what we're going to do today. But if we haven't met before, hi, my name's Erica Lynn and I'm a homeschool mom, and it's my hope to help make homeschooling easy for you too. So I'm taking all the things that I've learned over the years and putting them into these videos to help speed up your learning curve as you begin this journey. So I want to jump into how is Latin laid out in general. So we're going to start by the guide, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take Challenge B, first semester, week 10, and we're just going to use this as an example week as we go through. So this is what your guide paper is going to look like, and I know that's backwards for you, sorry. When you start looking at your guide, you're going to notice there's two columns here. The right side column is going to say your list of what you need to do. The left side column tells you where to reference it. Each week, you're going to have 5 tasks that CC wants you to do for Latin. First, you're going to read the assigned lessons. The assigned lesson is going to be over here on the left side. For week 10, it's lesson 9, pages 108 through 119. Lesson 9, they've actually split into 2 weeks, covering it week 9 and week 10. So this is the second half of lesson 9 that you're supposed to be covering. And then copy and learn new grammar rules. The ones they want you to learn are listed over here, rules 142 through 164. And those are in this blue book. And then make flashcards and memorize the vocabulary. The vocabulary list that they're talking about are all the vocabulary words listed between pages 108 and 119. That's where you're going to find those. And then you're going to review and memorize vocabulary from previous sessions. So you'll continue working on all your old vocab cards. And then finally, you're going to complete these exercises here. These are exercises, again, between the pages of 108 and 119. Okay, but you do notice here you're skipping some. When you look at these numbers, it says do 118 through 122. Then skip 23 and 24, then you do 125 through 127, and so on. So you don't have to do all the exercises. In A, you do some. In B, you do some more. And in 1, you do all the exercises. And that is how the guide is broken down. So what I do is I take this in my lesson plan and I break it down into daily tasks. And essentially what we have here is Henle itself is broken down into units and lessons. To understand how I've broken my daily lesson plan down, we're going to break down how the Henle book is set up, because each lesson in here has instruction, it has vocabulary, it has rules, and it has exercises. So all of the things they told you to do are broken down in this. So we are going to open up to lesson 9, which actually starts before page 108, 99, okay? So when we open up to the lesson, each lesson is set up the same way, okay? What you're going to find is if it's the start of a new unit, there's 14 units in the book, so there's like, 3 to 5 lessons in each unit. So it'll have the unit title. And then it'll have the lesson title, Lesson 9, the first conjugation. So this is the first time we jump into verbs, okay? Then the lesson is going to be broken down into sub-lessons, okay? So this one has an introduction. Not all lessons have an introduction section. Sometimes they jump right into section 1, section 2. And then we have lesson 1. You can see that there. Lesson 1, and then we're going to go to lesson 2. And I like to go through here and highlight all the lesson and sub-lesson titles with the same color of marker to kind of break up the page, so I can notice like, oh, every time I get to my purple highlighting, then I'm starting a new sub-lesson. Lesson 9 actually has 7 sub-lessons. So now I want to turn over to page 108, because this is technically where our lesson for week 10 is starting, okay? And this is halfway through lesson 9. And so on page 108, you notice there's some exercises at the top. Those belong to the previous sub-lesson, okay? All the way down here at the bottom starts sub-lesson number 4. That is where we're actually going to start our lessons this week. We always start with a fresh sub-lesson. So you're going to have lesson 9, sub-lesson 4. In my lesson plan, I'll write that 9.4, okay? Then underneath the lesson title, you're always going to have your instructions. This is your learning, your teaching, okay? It comes all the way over here. We've got some instructions. After you are learning the new concepts, you're going to have vocabulary. I like to draw a box around those. When I mark the vocabulary for the day, if you're studying lesson 9.4, you're going to do the vocabulary that's inside lesson 9.4, which would be on page 109, okay? After the vocabulary, they might have special notes, okay? They'll tell you maybe some other Latin to English words. They also might tell you specific rules that they want you to copy, or they might have a special application. Following those special notes, you have your exercises. So for sub-lesson 9.4, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. CC has not assigned all of those. This starts with exercise 117, but in the notes, it says you only have to do, let's see, in the guide, it says you only have to do 118 through 122. So you get to skip 117, but you do need to do 118, 119, 120, 121, 122, and then you get to skip 123, okay? All of that is noted in my lesson plan, which I'm gonna go over after we finish with the book. And that brings us to the end, and you can see my purple highlighting. This is now section 9.5. And so that is a new sub-lesson. And so usually you'll only have to cover one sub-lesson per day. Sometimes if they're short, you will do 2 sub-lessons. By the way, if you want to know more about how I highlight this and how I do tabs, all of my tabs are specifically color-coded to match the Latin charts that I have collected and distribute for free. I have a whole video on how to tab your book all the way from front to back. So this is 100% tabbed every single lesson, and it coordinates with like the different colors that we learn the different declensions in. And when it comes to verbs, it coordinates with the colors that they've used in the charts to organize those verbs. And so you can check out this video here. It's going to show you how to tab your Latin book. Now that you understand how the Henle book is laid out, let's jump into my lesson plan. In the Latin section, just like in the guide, it has us doing 5 things every day. We are going to do 5 things every day in my lesson plan, but I am simplifying it and calling it 3 categories. So every day you're going to start by spending the first 20 minutes practicing your rules. There's 2 parts to rules. One are the actual rules in the blue book that they want you to copy. And the rules that are assigned throughout the week match the sub-lessons in the book. So instead of just copying, like this week, you're supposed to copy 22 rules. Instead of copying 22 rules in one day and writing it down and forgetting about it, I'm gonna break that down. And you're going to copy the specific rules each day that you're going to be using in the sub-lesson that you're practicing. The vocabulary and then exercises will also line up to the rules that you are copying. And so it all works very succinctly. All right, so the first thing you're going to do is you're going to copy the rules. So of those 22 rules for the first day of the week, you're going to copy 142 through 147 and 163. Those are the rules that you need to know to learn the lesson and complete the exercises. So that's how I have grouped those out, separated them. The second thing you're gonna do, that should take you hopefully 10 minutes or less. The second thing you're gonna do is you're gonna copy one of these vocab charts. Think of these just like your essentials charts where you memorized the parts of speech and their jobs and what they do. This is exactly the same thing. We are learning their jobs. In English, our words have jobs based upon sentence order. In Latin, our words have jobs based upon these special endings that are added to each word. So you have your stem, and then you have endings that are added onto that. So these charts look different, but they are teaching the exact same things as the essential charts. What is the job of this word? So this is our first week that we are studying verbs. And so on here, the verbs that you're studying in the book are first conjugation, active, indicative. So that is what we are going to be copying for our rules homework as well. And this is to help you memorize the endings of each verb. First conjugation verbs, active, indicative, imperfect tense. There are 5 verb charts. And the bad news is that's a lot of verb charts. But the good news is sometimes as you start learning verbs, you think that it's never ending and that the verbs are going to go on and on forever. The good news is, even though this chart has a lot of information on it, this is all the ways that a first conjugation verb can be written with endings. There's no more. So it's not infinite. There is a finite amount. Now there's a lot, but again, it's not infinite. So this is Latin first conjugation. And then the first row, you can see right here, is active indicative, okay? And then the next section is active or passive indicative, and then active subjunctive and passive subjunctive. And hopefully you're recognizing some of those words from essentials. Our verbs are either active or passive. They're either indicative, subjunctive, or imperative. And it's the same in Latin. So we're breaking it down here. And if you ever see me abbreviate, like first conjugation AI, that's abbreviating active indicative, okay? Or PS would be passive subjunctive. So we're gonna call the conjugation, then I'm gonna tell you the active passive or indicative subjunctive. In Latin, you don't use imperative very much, although we do have imperative over here. And then the final thing is I'm going to tell you the tense. This is the imperfect tense here. Just like with nouns, there are multiple endings that are part of this group. And so when I tell you to copy, you need to copy all 6 words in this column. This is active, indicative, imperfect, okay? And so you're trying to memorize the endings. These endings are in red, which means when we look at our Latin book, and let me turn back over to the first lesson. This lesson is tabbed with red because these are indicative verbs. All the indicative verbs are tabbed in red. And so that's one example of how all of that coordinates. But you're just going to copy these 6 words, and you're copying it for the purpose of memorizing these endings. These endings, no matter what the stem is, the endings are always going to be the same for first conjugation, active, indicative, imperfect. So those 2 tasks are what make up your 20 minutes of rule practice, okay? It's not very difficult once you get into the pattern of it. You'll copy your rules from your blue book, and then you'll copy your rules from your copy chart, and then that'll be done for rules time. The second part is going to be your vocabulary. So if in the sub-lesson you are studying today, there is a new vocabulary list, I will put the page that vocabulary list is on. So for sub-lesson 9.4, which started on page 108, we already saw in the book, the vocabulary was on page 109. So I put that on there so you can just flip straight to page 109. You can copy down all of those vocabulary words, and then you need to mark all the things. You need to figure out, using your nouns and verb rules, are they masculine? Are they feminine? Which declension do they belong to? Or which conjugation do they belong to? So go ahead and write all those things on your cards like you have been doing. You're supposed to spend 20 minutes practicing your vocabulary. This is with the intent of memorizing it. So once you make your flashcards, if you have more of your 20 minutes left, start reviewing your flashcards, quiz yourself, actually work on learning that, okay? The more words you have memorized, the quicker you'll be able to translate your exercises. The third part of the daily lesson plan is the actual exercises and lesson. At the bottom of this section, I list the sub-lesson that we're on, 9.4. And so you know you need to read the entire lesson, 9.4. All of this instruction under the title until the vocabulary, okay? You've already copied down your vocabulary, so that already looks familiar. And then read any extra notes down below. If you don't understand what this instruction is telling you to do, you need to get help. Now's when you need to ask your parent, or you need to go watch iHeart Latin's Challenge A videos on YouTube, or you need to plug into Jam with Latin or Latin with Andy. There's lots of resources out there. But if you don't understand what the lesson is teaching you, you need to get help, because you're going to next apply this in the exercises. So you've read your lesson. Now I have listed out the exercises for that sub lesson that Cece has said you need to complete in the guide. If Cece didn't say you need to complete it, I won't include that number on the day. So I've read my lesson. I'm going to flip over. Now I'm going to do exercise 118, 119, 120, 121, and actually, because there were so many exercises on this sub lesson and not as many on the next one, I saved exercise 122 for tomorrow. That way you don't tire yourself out. Now, remember, you only need to spend an additional 20 minutes practicing your exercises. So we're going to tap out after an hour of working on Latin. Otherwise, you could be working on it all day long. And that's not the point of what we're trying to do here. So I would say today you've got 4 exercises. I would take your 20 minutes, I would divide it into 4 sections and spend 5 minutes on each different exercise. The reason you want to do all the exercises instead of just focusing on one and getting all the problems done in that exercise, I'd rather you just do 1 or 2 problems from each of the exercises, because each exercise is actually developing a different skill. Each exercise is having you practice something slightly different. And so it's better to get the practice for all the different skill sets because they're building on each other. And so essentially that is how the daily lesson plan is broken down and how Henle has designed the Latin program to work. And then you'll repeat the same thing the next day. 20 minutes of rules, 20 minutes of vocab, and 20 minutes of exercises. If you have any questions, put those in the comments below. And if you just popped onto this video, if you didn't come from my lesson plan, I will link that video up here for you. I hope that gives you lots of success. This Latin chart bundle is linked in my description as well. You can get it for free. It matches my lesson planner. And if you get the bundle called the Best Challenge A Year or the Best Challenge B Year, you're gonna get all of this and extra goodies. Okay, last thing, if your director has not given you Latin charts and you're looking at this going, I don't know what to do with this. Essentially, it's just a sheet of paper. I put it in a sheet protector, and we're just going to copy it with a dry erase marker like we did in Essentials. So you're gonna notice on one side, the chart is filled out and it has the endings that you have to memorize. On the other side, it's blank. So what I tell my students to do is I give them 2 colors of extra fine tip Sharpie markers, and whatever chart they're assigned to fill in, I tell them, fill in everything you can from memory, then switch colors and copy the rest by looking at the back. And then each time you copy the chart, you will be able to see the progress that you have made and how much more you have memorized. And I find that to be rewarding for a lot of students. I hope you all have a great day. Blessings on your Latin journey. It's my favorite strand. So I just really encourage you, don't give up. The repetition, it gets easier every year, and definitely stick in it all the way through, because by the time you get to challenge 2, the lessons are so much easier and so much faster and so much shorter. So you're really putting in the hard work here in A, B, and 1, and then it's going to be downhill from there. Bye-bye.